Chapter 56 Letters from a Distance and Hooves in the Dust. They remained in the foothills a few days longer, archiving, resting, letting the mountain winds tell their own part of the story. Wellington napped in patches of sun. Thunder grazed freely among the wildflowers. Peace, for once, did not feel temporary. Then the courier arrived. He wore a discreet uniform, delivered a sealed letter, bowed, and vanished. Lady Elizabeth recognized the crest even before she opened it. From the private desk of His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales. My dear Elizabeth, news travels faster than horses. I've read of your work in Ottawa, and now again in the West. I knew you would carry it to places I could not. I also knew, perhaps, that you would carry something else with you. Something I hoped would still be mine. That was foolish of me. I do not write to interfere. I write to say that when the history books begin to speak honestly of the riders, and they will, they must begin with you. Not because of lineage, not even because of bravery, but because you never asked the story to serve you. You served it, and it has rewarded you with purpose. If the line ever breaks again, and it might, I will ensure my crown does not stand in the way. And should you ever need it, know that my door and my regard remain open. Ride well, Elizabeth. A. She folded the letter slowly, said nothing. Louis stood nearby, running his hand over a saddle strap. He didn't ask. She tucked the letter into her journal. It's the past, but not a regret, she said. Good, he said, because neither of us rides backward. That afternoon they met Isaiah one last time. He gave them a bundle wrapped in rawhide. Inside, a pendant, 2 horses circling a cedar tree. This was Makwa Song's, he said. It belongs with your line now, so that both branches remain one. Tabitha took a photo of the bluff and added a note to the archive. 2 names cleared, 1 legacy restored. Frank rode ahead to scout the next trail. Wellington chased prairie dogs with reckless optimism. Lady Elizabeth and Louis remained by the tree where the cloak had been buried. Do you think the prince meant it? She asked. Louis didn't hesitate. Yes, but you don't belong behind a desk or beside a throne. You belong in the saddle, with truth, with me. She smiled. Thunder snorted. The wind blew south. And somewhere behind them, the dust rose not from erasure, but from galloping toward what mattered. Because the story wasn't finished. It was simply heading home. Chapter 57 Smoke from the Saddlebag and a Letter Too Far. The next morning brought a crisp sunrise, bright enough to scatter shadows, but not silence them. Lady Elizabeth rose early, seated beneath a cottonwood tree with pen in hand and a single page of thick parchment. Wellington watched her curiously. Louis watched from a distance, unsure if curiosity or caution was winning. By midday the letter was sealed. To His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales. Dear Arthur, I received your letter with the gratitude due both a sovereign and a man I once considered a possibility. You were correct. I never asked the story to serve me, nor would I ask a crown to bend to one rider's truth, but I am relieved you've chosen to bend with it. I do not write this from affection or politics. I write it because I believe you when you say you want to protect the story. And yet, protection is not possession. You once told me I was the first person to walk beside you rather than behind. Then let us agree. Some truths are not to be walked with, but ridden after. At speed, in storm. I ride where I am most needed, and where my heart rides too. With all due candour, Lady Elizabeth Featherstone. She gave it to the courier that afternoon. Lewis approached as the dust from the departing horse still hung in the air. "That wasn't necessary," he said. "He needed closure." Lewis frowned. "Did you?" She stood. "Don't ask questions you don't want answered." "I want honesty. From the woman I've crossed continents with. Not royal riddles." "Then listen," she snapped. "I answered him the way I answer everyone. With truth. I made my choice. That hasn't changed." "Then why write it at all?" She paused. "Because some doors don't close themselves." Wellington leaped between them, clearly unimpressed by raised voices. Tabitha, nearby, muttered, "Here comes the cat diplomacy." Lewis exhaled hard. "I trust you, but I need to know you're not still choosing." Elizabeth softened. "I'm not choosing between men. I'm choosing between what was and what rides beside me now." He nodded slowly. That evening she found him on the ridge with Thunder. "I won't write him again," she said. "Good," Lewis said, "because our story isn't one you finish by post. It's one you finish in the saddle." They rode down together, side by side. Behind them, smoke curled gently from the fire pit. Ashes of old letters, old ties. And ahead of them the road remained, as wild and open as the story itself. Still unwritten, still galloping forward. Chapter 58. Writers depart. Writers return. Lewis was gone by morning. He left no note, no anger, just a clean campsite and hoofprints pointed west. Lady Elizabeth stood by the ash circle, his absence heavy, but not vindictive, only silent. "He needs air," Edwina said gently. "Even riders need to circle back sometimes." Elizabeth nodded. "I didn't think it would feel like this." "That means it mattered." A few days passed in calm rhythm. They remained near the southern tip of Alberta, organizing the archive files, sending records to Indigenous councils and parliamentary offices. Then came the cousins. They arrived not with ceremony, but with noise. Laughter, boots, knapsacks, and a suspicious amount of maple fudge. First were the British cousins. Sebastian's younger sister, Clara, an Oxford historian with perpetually wind-blown hair, and Henry, a half-lost marquess who had once challenged a member of Parliament to a fencing duel over the Oxford comma. From Boston came the American contingent, sharp-eyed Amelia with her law degree and sketchpad, and her twin brother Graham, who worked in international climate law but still carried a lasso for reasons unexplained. The Canadian cousins rolled up in a truck from Montreal. Twins, Colette and Leon, both bilingual, both dressed like modern voyagers. "We heard there were horses, ghosts, and international scandal," Clara said. "You always did know how to throw a reunion." Edwina smiled. "It's a good time for reinforcements." "And for s'mores," Graham added. "But we'll settle for ghost stories." They gathered that evening around the fire, reviewing records and passing around stories like instruments in a band. "This isn't just your mission anymore," Colette said to Elizabeth. "This is ours, too." Leon pulled a folder from his backpack. Found something odd in the family archive. Mentions a midnight treaty and a woman named Violet linked to an American diplomat. Amelia leaned forward. That might tie the whole tri-nation theory together. We thought it was a myth. Clara opened a sketchbook. Inside, an old family crest with the twin horse seal. One white, one dark. You're all carrying pieces, Edwina said. You just didn't know they fit the same puzzle. That night, Lady Elizabeth sat alone beside the fire, a notebook open. Her hand hesitated over the page. She looked toward the west. Thunder shifted his weight, as if listening. Wellington leaped into her lap without asking. She smiled faintly. One day, she whispered, he'll come back. But until then, the line holds. Because it wasn't hers to carry alone anymore. The circle had grown, and the story had family now. Blood, bond, and belief. Lewis rode somewhere under the same stars. But the next steps? They would not wait for one man. They would ride anyway. Chapter 59. Maplewood in Mourning and Memory. Maplewood Manor never looked more alive, or more haunted. The cousins had settled in like a cavalry brigade with accents. Boots in the hall, teacups left on window ledges, debates in at least 3 languages, and an impromptu apple crumble bake-off between Clara and Colette that nearly burned down the conservatory. Yet, beneath the merriment, the house murmured with its own story, one that refused to stay buried. Lady Elizabeth gathered everyone in the blue parlor one rainy afternoon. The fire crackled. The mirror had not cracked again since the night of Violet's voice. Edwina laid out Lady Violet's diary, the maps, and the recovered ledger. This house was built on memory, but also on silence, she said. And now that we've heard her, we owe her more than discovery. We owe her recognition. Graham, the American cousin, nodded. Justice doesn't stop with exposure. It requires ritual. Amelia opened a folder of official paperwork. The burial registry was falsified. She was interred under a different name in an unmarked plot. Henry and Clara stood. We checked the Anglican church records in town, Henry said. There's a small cemetery behind the orchard, one grave without inscription. That's her, Edwina confirmed. She was meant to be forgotten. That evening, they walked as a group, family, friends, riders, through the misty orchard to the overgrown burial ground. Thunder followed. Wellington padded silently behind. Colette carried a bouquet of violets. Tabitha held a lantern. Lady Elizabeth carried the pendant from Makwa's song. They stopped before the blank stone. Wind stirred the grass. Lady Violet Rose Featherstone, Elizabeth said clearly. First Canadian witness rider, truth-bearer, and no longer erased. Isaiah Three Trees had sent a carved cedar plaque. They placed it at the base of the stone. Amelia read the inscription aloud. She rode with memory. She stood for truth. She rests in honor. Clara added a note in Latin. Graham sprinkled river water from the Ottawa. Edwina lit a small candle. This is not the end of her story, she said. It's the start of her chapter in ours. They returned to the manor in silence, not heavy, but respectful. That night, the house seemed to breathe easier. Tabitha caught sight of a flicker in the mirror, just once. Violet's reflection, smiling, mounted, then gone. Later, in the drawing room, Clara spread a map of the next trail. There's another rider mentioned in the Hawthorne files, one who vanished near Halifax. We'll go, Lady Elizabeth said. We'll honour them all. Colette raised a toast. To the forgotten, and to the ones who remember. And beneath the manor's creaking beams, a legacy no longer hidden pressed its weight into the foundation, not to burden, but to steady. Chapter 60. Ghosts of the Coast and the Map Beneath the Bell Tower. Halifax greeted them with wind off the Atlantic and seagulls that screamed like restless historians. The city was older than it pretended to be, and the witnesses arrived with caution sewn into their saddlebags. This is the last known location for Rider MC, Sebastian explained as they dismounted near St. Paul's Church. Only initials. No record of departure, just the vanishing. Amelia met them with city archives and a grin. I've already charmed 3 librarians and 2 historical society volunteers. You're welcome. They began in the bell tower. According to Tabitha's research, it had survived multiple fires, naval explosions, and an attempt to turn it into a tourist climbing wall. Clara pointed out the plaque beneath the stairs. Dedicated to maritime communications. Translation: coded messages hidden in church ledgers. Inside a hollow step, Graham found a metal case marked only with the twin horse seal. Colette opened it. Inside, salt-stained pages, a tiny carved feather, and a simple drawing. A horse standing beside the sea, she whispered, and a single name, Miriam Callahan. A woman rider, Lady Elizabeth said. She used her position as a lighthouse keeper to send signals across the water, not just for ships, for truth. Edwina turned over the feather. The ink matches Sanctuary script. She was trained, but not by the Brotherhood, by someone else. A final folded note inside read, If they come for me, I will light the cape 3 times. That means follow the rocks, not the road. The truth lies where the land curves back. Frank blinked. Is it weird I love her already? They followed the clue to a remote point near Cape Sambro. There, carved into the rocks at low tide, was a code pattern familiar to Sebastian. The witness line's early maritime cipher. This could open the 3rd vault, he said, the one we thought was lost in the archives. Back in Halifax's records office, they tested the key. The vault opened. Inside, logbooks, more correspondence with indigenous stewards from coastal nations, and one final sealed scroll labeled simply Northwest Passage Rider Map. Lady Elizabeth stood with the scroll in her hand, wind tugging at her coat. She didn't vanish, she said. She went further. Lewis's voice came quietly from the doorway. And maybe she's waiting. The room fell still. Wellington leaped from a desk with a chirp. Thunder stood outside, flanked by cousins and kin. Elizabeth turned. Lewis stepped forward, eyes never leaving hers. I circled back because I realized something. Riders don't run. We ride forward, even if it means returning. She placed the scroll in his hands. Then ride with me to the end of the map. And together they stepped into the light. The sea, the story, and the legacy spread before them, unfolding, waiting.